Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's February 9th, 2022, and today I thought I'd sit down and try this setup that I've got set up here. I've got a camera where you may be able to see me in the lower right-hand part of the screen and be able to see a couple of videos that I shot a while ago. And the topic that I'm going to talk with you about today is thermal mass. I've had questions about thermal mass excuse me, after some of my videos on thermal mass, and some of them have to do with cooling capacity, how the system works to cool the house during the hot summer months. And so I thought what I'd do is start off with some footage of a video that I shot last summer sometime. And I think the title is something like 1984 construction of our home. And our home is a passive solar home. And since we're in the northern hemisphere, the house faces south with all of the glass or the majority of the glass facing south. And there's some glass on the east and west and only one window on the north, and that's our street view on the north side. So we took a lot of flack initially when we were building the house because people didn't understand it. Now some of the photographs are smaller than the size of the screen, but the next video that we're showing in this video is actually part of the greenhouse construction. But this is actually the house that we live in now that we began construction, I believe, in 1984. So I'm going to try and click this, get this video started. So you'll see another mouse cursor. The black cursor is the one I'm using now. So I'll just say this is the water entrance coming into the house. Over here is the utility room. This on the right side of the screen is where the thermal mass is located. There's thermal mass in all throughout the house, but the volumetric area where we're going to store all the heat is actually in the right side of the screen down in here. And you can see we got 3 courses of block laid so far on a footer. The material excavated to the sides. The area right in here is where the living room is. You'll see that in a little while as well. So it is a salt box, and that's the shape of the house, where the tallest part of our house is facing south with all the glass on the south side of the house. This is the south side of the house that we see right here. That's my brother Dave, that's my brother Dave, and that's me. There are pipes that come through the outside of the house that bring cool air from the ground level into the plenum, and we'll talk about the plenum in a couple of moments. This is the electrical entrance cable. On the other side here, part of the foundation is where the utility room will be, and where we'll take the heat from the 3 chimneys and bring the heat from the 2 lateral chimneys, ones on either side of the central chimney, and bring that heat from the peak of the house down into the thermal mass. Now we're over on the east side of the house. Now we're on the west side of the house looking east. So the whole white area that you see on the floor here is insulation. It's a styrofoam type of insulation, just I think 1 inch thick over here. There's black tar surface on the outside of the house and a layer of plastic as well to help seal the house so that we get no airflow and no water penetration into the house. Over here you can see 2 of the chimneys. The third one is over off screen. The central one is where the wood stove fires into, and that exhaust will go up and out of the house. And the other 2 chimneys on the sides of this central chimney will conduct heat from the central chimney, bring it into the to the lateral chimneys, and take the heat from the peak of the house in a countercurrent system. So as the heat rises in the central chimney, we'll suck air from the ceiling and absorb heat. So the 3 ways that heat is transferred is conduction, radiation, and convection. So conduction is when 2 surfaces are touching each other. You touch something that's warm, that's the heat is conducting into your hand, or if you touch an ice cube, the heat from your body is being conducted to the ice cube. And you can see little bits of insulation around the perimeters. Now we're in the large thermal mass area. Sorry, I'm jumping around. This is the plenum on the east side of the house. This isn't large enough for a person to get into. And the square things that you see sticking up, they come up into through floor grates on the floor. So this will all be concrete on top of this stone that is here. There's gaps between the stone, which the air will flow from one plenum on the other side of the house through this stainless steel grating that you see here into the plenum, and the plenum will dump air into these pipes on either end, the corner of the house or in the center of the house. These ones will empty into the first floor, and these will empty into the second floor, the pipes on either side. The walls are insulated. There's vapor barrier here as well. So we're trying to maintain thermal barrier, vapor barrier, air barrier, and as well as a moisture barrier. So we want to maintain our barriers so that our thermal mass is basically a battery that's insulated from the outside world that can store the heat. And and I have made videos in the past about the various types, like water that you'll see in the greenhouse has a much higher heat capacity. All right, so over here you can see the 3 chimneys. The central one, you can see a little bit of the clean out drawer right there. Excuse me. There's 4 foot in height from the top of the concrete down to the base of this area. You can actually crawl through this plenum. The plumbing goes through this as well. The cool air ducts come into this area. Excuse my coughing here. And the air will come through the chimneys, through a fan system, and go through the grating here and charge the thermal mass of the house. So there's both charging and flushing. It's just like a toilet system. So you will recharge a toilet after you flush it, but you can eliminate the waste by flushing it. And that's the same way that we charge the house and charge the thermal mass. And then during the evening hours, we will flush the house. And I'll explain it more when we get to more videos later on. So here's the water pipe by my foot here. And I'm moving the stones around to get nice coverage and good compaction of the stone, because concrete's going to be poured on top of this. No insulation will be put on top of this stone. This stone, we want the heat to rise through the floor, and you can see in other videos where I take the temperature, the thermal gun, and go around and take the temperature of different locations in the house. So there's an image of some of the ductwork, 4-inch ductwork. That's going to go to the second floor. Okay. So the charging of the thermal mass, and there's lots of thermal mass besides this subterranean insulated thermal mass here. The charging of the thermal mass will be not just from the sun's radiation coming through the east, then south, then western windows, but it'll also be charged by us living in the house, the different cooking that goes on in the house, the wood stove. Here's an example. We're outside of where the greenhouse construction is now. This whole area is the greenhouse. Even though there's a partition in the center, the greenhouse has 2 different sections. This is the area here that we see in the screen. That is the work area and coop. The coop is closest to us to this yellow post right here. This is the greenhouse again. Sorry, the images are flowing by so quickly. I'll pause this for a second. So we have our footer here. These boards will come off soon. The concrete is poured for the footer. The rebar is going up. That's going to be tied with other rebar inside of insulated concrete foam. Both of these sections at the top right of your screen is part of the greenhouse. That's the one closest to the coop and work area. This is the area that's farthest away from the coop and work area. And the width of the greenhouse itself from one side to one side here is 32 feet, and it's about almost 70 feet long. And it's divided into 2 different sections inside of this greenhouse. And next you'll be seeing insulated concrete foam boards or forms. So this is it. So it's 2.5 inches thick each side, so it's very well insulated. 8 inches of concrete in the center of the insulated concrete forms. and this is where the electric wires come into the building. Water already comes up. This is the water line here. In a couple of moments, so this is all work area here and coop down at the far end. The greenhouse is over here. Insulated 3.5 inches of blue dowel insulation across the floor. A concrete pad was played on top of it in the center, and then these concrete forms were formed in the building, and this is where in the central part of both sections of the greenhouse. This is the stone being loaded into the area, floor drains, as well as other plant drains. So John's using the big excavator here, and he's dumping various size stone into this area, including some stuff that's as small as pea size and smaller size gravel and stone. So it's insulated below the ground. It's insulated both on the outside of the concrete and on the inside of the concrete, making it 13.5 inches thick. I think it's 13.5 inches thick there. And you'll see the ductwork in different sections of this area, bringing entrances and exits into the thermal mass units. And you'll see that there will be water totes going down the central part of this. All of this stone that you see before us right now is going to have a concrete floor poured on top of it. And that concrete floor is also part of the thermal mass. So thermal mass can be anything that's within an insulation barrier where you can charge the system and then gradually discharge it at an appropriate rate. There's 2 additional heat intake ducts there in case we put an electric dryer inside of the work area, or our dehydrators that can dump the extra heat into the thermal mass. That central area you'll see in a moment. This is, you could see some of the 3.5 inch thick insulation boards there. It's below the concrete that you see here, and water totes will be going down in the center of it. There's a couple of black pipes you'll see down here on the floor, and those black pipes take cool water from the Earth's surface temperature at about 55 degrees. And when I say surface, it's at the base of the pond, just like the temperature in our root cellars. So the temperature there remains about 55 degrees Fahrenheit during all summertime, no matter how hot it gets. And that can be used to help cool the water totes, which have a much higher heat capacity. When we talk about thermal mass, we talk about storing heat. Volumetric heat capacity is another term you can use to search online to see these things. You can see one of the pipes on, well, you'll be able to see it on your left-hand side again in a moment. And that's one of the pipes. It's behind, all right, maybe we won't be able to see it, but there are pipes that go down in here. They conduct the heat energy going back and forth inside of the thermal mass area. And each one of these sections in the corners here, there are penetrations. So here's a duct, here's another duct. They're all over the place. The water totes line the whole central part of the building. So this has a much higher heat capacity than the stone and the concrete. Now we're in the living room of our house. To the left side of the screen is the north side of the house. No windows except for in the kitchen. We have one small window there. Lots of thermal mass. All of this wood, since the house was built from the inside out, all of this wood is part of the thermal mass as well as all the stone wall, the stone chimneys going around. The central chimney right at the very peak there goes out of the house, and the 2 chimneys on either side absorb the heat either from the wood stove and the wood chimney. All of this extra thermal mass is used to retain heat, both for radiant heat sources as well as for convection. So as air flows down through the outer chimneys and goes underground, that's convection. So convection is when is the flow of energy, sort of like current. When we say flow, it's either through airflow or through water flow. Now we can see the south side of the house. There's much more glass on the south side of the house. You can see it's a cathedral ceiling, so there's nothing holding the hot air from rising to the very peak of the house. Also, at the north side of the house, on the roof, there are skylights where we can exhaust the heat during the summertime. So you flush the heat. So actually we're inside of the kitchen here. That was the one window on the north side of the house. We're on top of all of that thermal mass, the stone that's below this concrete as we're looking here right now. And all of this extra thermal mass, all of this wood, even the sheetrock material is part of the thermal mass. And the doggy and cat door is right below where we just walked there. This someday will be an extension of our kitchen. And we'll be taking a look through the utility room, which is on our left side here in just a moment. And that's our access to get behind the chimneys and change the air filters that filter the air. So this is the floor. We'll pick up the floor, and you can see, and of course I need to replace that insulation, but the clean out for the central chimney is there. The two other chimneys bring the hot air from the peak of the house. It's filtered through this filter, and it's loaded into the thermal mass below the ground. The thermal mass above ground is passively charged, and the thermal mass below ground is actively charged. So by having those cool air ducts in the plenum, by opening the windows at the floor of the house during the hot summer months, allows the cool air to come into the house and the hot air to be exhausted out of the skylights or other windows as well. Heat rises. So we use the you can see the mess with all of my network stuff here, but we use the all forms of heat transfer. We use both conduction, convection, and radiation. Radiation is when you walk by a building in the summertime when the sun's been beating on it, you can feel that sun radiating. That's electromagnetic energy. It's the photons hitting your skin and warming you. When you stand outside and you feel the sun on you, you can tell which way is south if you're in the northern hemisphere, which way is north if you're in the southern hemisphere, based on the radiant heat, the photon energy hitting your skin and warming you up. You get cooled off by the wind blowing outside, and you get the wind chill effect. So that's convection, and conduction is when you touch that warm surface. So by having a super insulated home, a relatively airtight home, but again, this isn't completely airtight because we have the cool air intakes, and we have the cat door, as well as some of our doors and windows aren't that great, to tell you the truth. So this is how our system works. We use the geothermal mass in the base of the root cellar. The walls are super insulated using the same insulated concrete forms and the 8 inches of concrete. And we don't have any insulation on the floor of the root cellar, so the 55-degree temperature of the earth goes ahead and maintains a nice cool temperature in the root cellar as long as the doors are closed and the floor is actually insulated above the root cellar itself. So, and I'd say refer back to the videos that I've created in the past about thermal mass. I've made some of them. I've talked about energy storage as well, many different videos. But I wanted to keep this one pretty much simple and basic and share with you what we have here. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thanks so much for watching, folks, and have a great day. Bye-bye now.